to the job, but once you get elected, there's a service component to the job. What about your service as a United States Senator? Should voters who are trying to make up their minds in Georgia, what part of your service would you like to highlight for them?
Well, that's a tough question, Trey. You know, as an outsider, I never ran for office before I ran for the Senate in 2014. I just felt like the country was headed in the wrong direction. I felt like I could make a difference, and I believe we have. But the most gratifying thing may have just happened today, as a matter of fact. I mean, in this bus tour, you see people all over the state. I mean, we're going to small towns all over the state. And unlike my opponent who's hanging around Atlanta, we're going all over the state, over 125 stops. And just today, I had 6 people individually, the 6 men, step up to me quietly after the event was over. And these events will have anywhere from 50 to, we had almost 4,000 people in one last week with Ivanka. This man called me before I got back on the bus. He said, there's 6 times this happened. I just want to tell you, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I never got anybody to help me with my problems until your staff helped me this year, last year, whatever. But each one of these 6 people made those comments to me today.
Nothing like nailing a senator with that age-old gotcha question of, what service have you done for your voters? Here's the thing, when a question like that leaves you speechless, you might be in the wrong line of work. Imagine having served 6 years in the United States Senate, and yet the self-proclaimed highlight of your career happened this very week, where 6 random people said that no one's ever helped them until Purdue's staff did. No specifics, just an arbitrary anecdote about people approaching him and saying his staff was helpful. Now, when I think about a selfless public servant, it'll be hard not to think of David Perdue. Now, so as not to waste even a second more without stating the obvious, David Perdue is not in the business of performing any services for his constituents. He's not in the business of helping people. He's not in the business of making people's lives better. David Perdue is in the Senate to help himself. And if you need any proof of that, look no further than how he's enriched himself while in office. Of all 100 senators, David Perdue is the single most prolific stock trader in the Senate, and a number of those trades garnered him money off of companies that stood to benefit from legislation of committees that he served on. For example, at the outset of the pandemic, Perdue got to work helping the American people. What I meant was he got to work purchasing stock in the businesses that made money from the pandemic, including Pfizer. Because why help contain a pandemic when you could just cash out from it? Another example came when Perdue bought stock in a Navy contractor, BWX Technologies, immediately before being named chair of the Senate Armed Services Subcommittee on Sea Power. And what did he do from there? Worked on a defense bill that drove money to that very company, because of course. Another instance came when Perdue sold more than $1 million in stock in January from an Atlanta financial tech company, Cardlytics, whose board of directors he previously sat upon only weeks before that CEO stepped down and the stock price plummeted. And once it hit nearly rock bottom, Perdue bought the stock back, and since it's quadrupled its price. And as if that convenient timing wasn't bad enough, investigators found that only 2 days before Perdue first sold his stock, the Cardlytics CEO emailed Perdue and mentioned, quote, upcoming changes. Perdue then responded that he didn't know what the CEO was talking about, and then the CEO responded the next day saying, David, sorry, that email was not meant for you, wrong David. So either they realized that they had written evidence of insider trading, or an email warning of upcoming changes only 48 hours before the CEO stepped down from the company that Perdue just so happened to dump over $1 million of stock in was just a coincidence. Take all the time you need with that one. And that might explain Jon Ossoff's attack on David Perdue here.
Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly to the COVID-19 pandemic if you hadn't been fending off multiple federal investigations for insider trading. It's not just that you're a crook, Senator. It's that you're attacking the health of the people that you represent. You did say COVID-19 was no deadlier than the flu. You did say there would be no significant uptick in cases. All the while, you were looking after your own assets and your own portfolio, and you did vote 4 times to end protections for pre-existing conditions. 4 times. And the legislation that you tout, the PROTECT Act, it includes loopholes that specifically allow insurance companies to deny policies to Georgians with pre-existing conditions. Can you look down the camera and tell the people of this state why you voted 4 times to allow insurance companies to deny us health coverage because we may suffer from diabetes or heart disease or asthma or have cancer in remission Why, Senator?
And so not only was the line, "It's not just that you're a crook, Senator," the most devastating of this entire campaign cycle, but it's also the most accurate. Beyond that, building on what Jon Ossoff said, Perdue has been on the wrong side of the pandemic all along. Since day one, while Americans, including his own constituents, were hurting, Perdue's position is that giving people stimulus checks wasn't a worthwhile idea.
I think incenting people right now through payroll tax is one way to do it. I do support that, actually. I support that better than giving just a direct payment like we did in the first round of CARES. I really oppose that because we didn't see the impact back in 11 and 12 when that was done.
And yet when he found himself in the Senate runoff, realizing how popular stimulus checks are with the vast majority of Americans, he suddenly pivoted to giving a bunch of non-committal answers on $2,000 checks. And the only point at which he finally decided that in fact he does support them was as soon as Mitch McConnell made it known that he would block the bill from ever coming up for a vote. And so that gave Perdue a clear runway to suddenly change his tune and pretend that he fully supported them, knowing full well that he'd never actually have to cast a vote for it. In other words, it was just empty virtue signaling so that he could pander for votes, all without actually having to lift a finger to help people. And that's the most disgusting part of all of this, that while Perdue views this entire thing as one big political maneuver, the rest of the country views these checks as a means of survival. This $2,000 could mean the difference in being able to pay the rent, or put food on the table, or keep the heat on. It could mean the difference between life or death. And the only point that David Perdue could even pretend that he cared enough to support them was only when he was assured that it wouldn't even mean anything. Because God forbid he actually helped anyone other than himself. So when Perdue is asked about the most noteworthy part of his service, there is a reason that he has no answer. And that's because his career has been the antithesis of service. It's been nothing more than aggressive self-preservation and voracious greed. He is in that job for himself and himself alone. So the people of Georgia have a choice to make, a choice that goes beyond partisan politics. They can either re-elect a man to the US Senate whose sole priority is padding his portfolio and who couldn't even name a single credible noteworthy accomplishment from his time in office, or they can elect Jon Ossoff, who will ensure that we have adequate relief in the midst of this pandemic, who will ensure that we have a livable wage, who will ensure that we have a more just society, and so much more. The choice couldn't be more stark and couldn't come at a more pivotal time. So if you want a Senate actually looking to help you, then retire David Perdue and elect Jon Ossoff to the Senate. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.